You got wars all over the place, trade wars with China, supply chains breaking, government shut down, inflation. They're going to lower rates again, right? But they haven't hit their 2% inflation target in like 55 straight months. They're 50% away, and that's okay. They call it tepid, but you're 50% away from your target. That means you're giving up on inflation. By the way, that 3% level is a lie. We know this. John Williams of Shadow Stats, who just measures it the way they used to, would say it's 11. But even at 3%, which is a bunch of crap, they're going to lower rates again, pouring gasoline and giving up on the dual mandate, in essence, by letting inflation run hotter to, stabilize the employment market. But who knows? Who knows? It's devaluing the dollar.
A quick break to share with you this wonderful product called Masterpiece. It is proven to taking out graphene oxide, aluminums, heavy metals, microplastics. They also are looking at these MAC addresses, and there's more and more research and there's studies coming out. There's 4 documentaries that are being made on their studies of how they're able to disable MAC addresses that are somehow put into people. This is amazing stuff. I highly recommend. I buy a whole box of it and I make sure my whole family has it. If you are interested in trying this and really cleaning up your body from microplastics, graphene oxide, you can also test yourself. You can get your hair tested, see what you are before and what you are after you use this for a few months. They stand behind what they're doing with tests, studies, and real results. And look for the link below where you can buy Masterpiece yourself. It'll provide you a discount, or you can go to sarahwestall.com under shop. Welcome to Business Game Changers. I'm Sarah Westall. I have Andy Schectman coming back for our Friday night economic review. We are going to go back over what actually happened with this latest correction. Almost ended up being a 10% correction in the gold market. Silver dropped too, but behind it was big players fixing the market. And he's going to come and talk about what actually happened, where it originated, and the fact the media was all over it and made it snowball more. And now it's going back up. So it wasn't something. Did they make it drop so they could buy? Or did they drop to try to lose confidence? It was a purposeful thing, and it's not lawful what they did. But you know what? We're getting used to people doing collusion and doing whatever they want, right? It's as if they don't care anymore, and there's never any consequences for this kind of behavior. But it's our job as journalists and people in the media to point it out and tell you what's actually going on, which you're not going to get elsewhere. So on that vein, if you are really paying attention and realize that the global economic situation means you need to be in gold and silver to protect yourself, and because the whole world's moving in that direction for monetary policy and for backing, you need to get some gold and silver, and really need to buy from somebody that you can trust. And I think Miles Franklin has shown you that you can trust them, and their premiums are lower and very competitive, and they promise to give you the best prices in the industry on top of being the most trustful company out there. So if you are interested, go to sarahwestall.com/Miles Franklin, fill out that form, and you will get a copy of their private price list. And they have the best people that can work with you as well. Okay, let's get into my Friday night economic review with Andy Schectman. Hi, Andy. Welcome back to the program.
Sarah, good to see you. Thank you for having me. I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing okay with all things considered.
Right.
But yeah, it's been a wild week for me. It's nonstop, which we talked about a little bit, which will be coming public soon, probably within the next couple weeks. I want to talk to you about some of the developments that's going on. First, we talked a little bit about the gold, the massive drop in gold. It wasn't massive. It was like a 6% drop in gold. And gold was up by 66%, over the year. And so it really wasn't a huge correction, but it wasn't authentic either. And you've done some work figuring out who the heck was behind this. Can you talk about it?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. And it's actually pretty darn close to 10% was the final number. And silver fell a tremendous amount also. And, one of the things that I've always said to you, Sarah, that you are more media than the mainstream media truly is, because you give the facts the way they're supposed to be. Now let's look at the side of the mainstream media who said everywhere, you saw more mainstream media coverage of gold over the last several days than you did the whole way up. And some of the things that they would say, which are valid, went up for 9 straight weeks, valid, was overbought, valid, was in need of a correction, valid. Markets don't move straight up without a pullback, and this could be a flush out, also valid. Was beyond moving averages, way above moving averages, valid. The RSI, the momentum indicator, way in overbought territory, and typically you would see a correction, valid. And could this be the top? That was what they all wanted to say, a top, like we saw in 2011 and 1980 before that. And everyone is talking, this is the top, sell your gold, it fell that much, blah, blah, blah. Okay, all of it's valid. What invalidates this is how it happened. And they neglect to tell us how the snowball got rolling down the hill. Now, this is the part that bothers me because, it's kind of like if your mom said to you when you were a kid, don't play football in the house. If you break something, it's your rear end, and you break her favorite vase. And you neglect to tell her that you were playing football. You just bumped into it. You said, but you were playing football in the house. And that's kind of what I'm getting at here. What the mainstream media said in many respects was valid. Again, bashing gold, always looking for the opportunity to show the downside of gold when it has outperformed everything for the past 25 years. All traditional assets pale in comparison to the performance of gold and silver, in particular gold, but now silver too. All right, so what happened? So at roughly when the first snowball went down the hill, it was in the middle of the night. They got the ball rolling, and there was one that happened very late and one that happened around 9 o'clock, and it was last week between Wednesday and Friday. But in both instances, some entity, and we believe they are European central banks or commercial banks on behalf of probably some of the central banks, but 3 or 4 European commercial banks came in and dumped billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of gold and silver onto the market after after the United States, New York had closed and before Asia had opened. The other one of them, either the first or the second, was after London had closed before it got to New York, or after Asia had closed before it got to London. In either case, the exact time, all I can tell you is that it was done in the access market where there is zero liquidity. The traders are not there. The only way to sell that amount of metal would be to do it in New York during New York trading hours when the traders are there, when the liquidity is there, so that they could slowly bleed it into the demand that we've seen for the last 9 weeks. Not dump it when in the most thinly traded segment of the trading day, when no one is there to absorb the sell orders. And all that would do would be guarantee you the worst settlement you could possibly get and trigger the sell orders that are run by algorithms that are running hedge funds. When they get breached, bang, they sell, which the price falls more, trigger. And gold falls by 150, almost $200+ and silver by a couple of bucks. And then it happened again the next day. I think the first one was in the middle of the night. The second one was at about 8 or 9 o'clock Eastern, in between the U.S. close of New York and before Asia opened. In either case, that trader would be fired and shot, and not in that order. You are guaranteeing yourself the absolute worst settlement. It was a drive-by shooting. Now, what happened?
None of the business news channels, none of the finance channels, none of these news organizations even bothered to dig into it, but they did a coordinated effort to then say how bad gold is, which ballooned the losses and got that snowball.
Of course. And if you want to say all the things that are valid, you might want to say, by the way, because where's the journalistic integrity? Where's the effort that you and I put in every day, like we were talking about before we came on air, to say, by the way, some idiot with a third of a brain cell dumped it when there's no one there to receive the sell orders, collapsing the market. Now, the other part that's very interesting is that there's a man named Michael Lynch who does a great job at analyzing the COMEX market, and he said something very interesting happened. He said right after that. Now, the second one that happened at around 9 o'clock, I think that would have been on Thursday, I believe, last week. Silver went down by $1.50, then bang, shot right back up into the green. Gold, because of all the sale orders, the triggers, it didn't make it all the way back up. But what happened to push it back up? Well, it's very interesting to me. He cites two major U.S. commercial banks that came in and bought tremendous amounts of immediate delivery contracts, the October immediate delivery contracts. And in fact, between the 17th and the 20th, or the 17th, 18th, and 19th, there were 6,000 contracts for immediate delivery issued in gold. Now, what's very unusual about that is that late in the month, it's actually a record for that volume that late in the month. Traditionally, when contracts are held, the first day of delivery, they post notices we're standing for delivery, which would be October 1st. And instead, after the price got the snot knocked out of it by selling December future contracts, which drive the future price down, drive the spot price down, when there's no one there to provide liquidity, exacerbating it, hitting sell orders, someone came in and bought immediate delivery October contracts where you can buy right now and stand for delivery. We are at, in terms of delivery this month, and I'll tell you who it is in a second, but in terms of delivery this month alone, we are at already almost 59,000 contracts at 100 ounces apiece. So that's 590 or 5.9 million ounces of gold, in essence, stood for delivery this month alone. And who's standing for delivery every single month on billions of dollars worth of gold and silver in COMEX? Who is bringing all of this in, saying, no more paper promises. Give me the real thing. Who's doing it? Journalism isn't talking about that either.
Who is doing it? Who are you
That
thinking?
is a good question. If I had to guess, and I'll tell you, let me reserve that for one moment, and then I'll answer that. So, all right, we got this situation. Who came in and bought it? Well, Michael Lynch says there were two Western banks, Morgan Stanley and Bank of America. Now, what is interesting about that? So my whole career, Sarah, people would say, okay, fine, a 5% allocation. Those financial advisors or Wall Street wouldn't even say any gold. Jamie Dimon, never. No one would talk about gold, right? You don't need to own any. It's a pet rock that pays no interest. Well, it's outperformed the S&P for 25 years, 9.9 versus 9.6, and that's if you reinvested your dividends the whole way, which no one does, per year, 9.9% per year versus 9.6 for the S&P. It's beat the S&P 500 this year. It's quadrupled it in the face of the AI tech boom, the biggest boom ever. Gold's quadrupled it. No one talks about it. It's because whoever is buying all of this, the central banks and now the most knowledgeable traders in the United States, like Bank of America and Morgan Stanley, wait till I tell you this last piece of it, they're gobbling the crap out of it. And they're doing so using the rhetoric and the lack of any attention or any positive spin on media or any journalistic integrity to do so. It's been the central banks for 5 years, as I've been screaming to you, as it's gone way the hell up in price, and no one talks about it. So what's unusual about Bank of America and Morgan Stanley? Morgan Stanley's chief investment officer a month ago came out and said the 60-40 Wall Street mantra, the 60% stock, 40% bond that has been for 50 years. They would tell you, if you're going to retire, let's put 60 in stock, 40 in bonds, and let it run. And in an interest rate environment since 82 that's fallen at a 45-degree angle, you retire wealthy. But he comes out and says, oh, that's no longer. It's 60-20-20. Sell half of your bonds, put 20% in gold. What? Really? Well, Morgan Stanley, chief investment officer, was the one that said that. Michael Lynch says they came in and bought a tremendous amount of gold and silver. The other one, Bank of America, their chief analyst, Michael Hartnett, who has a very expensive newsletter, north of 10 grand a year, sends it to the institutional traders. He said, no. The new mantra is 25% stock, 25% bond, 25% short-term treasury, 25% gold. What? So Bank of America and Morgan Stanley, who are telling their clients to put 25 and 20% of their assets in gold, came in and scooped it all up for immediate delivery contracts, records 3 days in a row, record delivery that late in the delivery cycle.
So they
massive
fixed it.
amounts,
They fixed it so that they could get it at a much lower price so they could
and
they
cover
gained
short positions,
and they gamed
and
the
cover
system.
short
Okay,
positions. Yes.
how illegal is that? I mean,
Well,
can they,
it's
where is it
coordinated.
legal? Can you
No,
coordinate can you
no.
take down the market, screw everyone, get that, because they screwed everybody 10%, and then get that at a lower rate and then jack it down, it's gonna go back up.
Well, who's on vacation right now? Oh, that'd be the CFTC. As the government is shut down, there's no watchdog.
Oh,
They've been
yeah.
doing this stuff forever, and it is for sure collusion. But the thing of it is that the footprint shows that the sellers were European banks and one Canadian bank. The buyers were the U.S. banks. Now that takes us down a different path for another day, where there are people like Tom Luongo who believes that there is a battle going on between the European banks and the banks here in the West. So you asked me, who could it be? I've had this feeling for a long time that we are moving to a new system where gold and silver
Yeah.
are being integrated into the system. The United States government calls silver a critical element right now. They just wrote that into the new guidelines that are being approved right now. And you've heard me talk about Judy Shelton and all of the gold, billions upon billions upon billions upon billions upon billions that have been coming in since November. We've been net exporters for the last 50 years, and now we are, if not the largest importer, at least according to records that we know of, across the globe.
Well, with
Massive
silver,
amounts.
well, silver going up in value as far as being acknowledged as a mineral that is really important.
Critical.
It's critical for electronics and things. Where do you see that balance between gold and silver? Is it going to stay at the historical levels of like 8 to 1, or do you think it could start to decrease that difference in price?
Well, the for 5,000 years it was 16 to 1. The geological ratio right now has actually fallen to 7 to 1, yet it's priced at 80 plus to 1. And
Or
that's because
133 last week, but
uh,
go ahead.
and that's because of my mind, the military industrial complex. The European and the United States banks, for the better part of the last 40, 50 years, have stepped on silver. They need it to make high tech weapons. And that's how they've ruled the world. And it's not even the price getting away from them. It's the fact that silver is becoming so hard to find. We've had 5 years in a row of 200 million ounce plus shortfalls between supply and demand. There's a billion ounce shortfall over the last 5 years.
So
And the military,
if it adjusted to what the military, like you're going to say that they're suppressing it so they can get access to it at a low price, but if it adjusted to normal supply demand uh, pressures, what should it be priced at just
well,
today? Not counting the economic situation that the future of what's going to happen with the crash and what should it be
well,
priced
the
just
geologic
basic supply
ratio.
and demand?
And gold should be a lot higher. It should
Sure.
be. And because of Gibson's paradox, the inverse relationship between real interest rates and gold, the Western banks have stepped on gold too. But silver was for the military industrial complex to wage war, make high tech weapons, F 35s and Tomahawk missiles, and sell them to other countries like the Ukraine, blow up the Ukraine. And who gets the reconstruction contracts? That's BlackRock, who, by the way, is also the custodian of the world's largest silver trust with JP Morgan, SLV. And there's a 81 million share short position in SLV right now. It should be illegal. They are able to drive down the paper price on SLV. And you got JP Morgan and BlackRock as the custodian, but who is the owner of all of the weapons manufacturers? Well, that's BlackRock. And so they are the military industrial complex, and amongst others. So they hold the paper price down to make high tech weapons, to sell them to the world, to get reconstruction contracts, to wage war, to stay in power. But if you took 4,000 and divide it by 7, you get 571 right now today. That's, if you told me silver was on its way to 500, people would say you're out of your mind. But in reality, that is the geologic ratio. And even if
And
you
supply demand, but the supply demand would even put it above the geological ratio, I would think, because
We are moving to that level, yes. And so these lofty numbers that people talk about, are they really crazy? Or perhaps do we just not know what real price discovery truly is? And I would caution people to think that that's silly,
How do they
because
control the price like that, though? I mean, so the military wants this material, it's at a low price. How are they controlling it beyond supply demand when the actual metal is becoming hard to get?
well, that's the hard part. And that's why we've been in backwardation for the last 3 weeks. It's now kind of normalized, but it seems to be happening again. All of a sudden, there was a bunch of metal that fled into London to plug the hole. But how long can that last for? Because in London, they have, and this is how they do it. They sell paper. The banks that work on behalf of the government have enough money to overwhelm all of the trades, and so they know where all the pain points are. They know where the options are. They know where the resistance levels are, the moving averages. So they sell with unlimited amounts of paper until the funds or the longs capitulates, and then they just swoop in, cover their shorts by driving the price down, and
But they're
everybody
selling
wins.
paper. They're not selling
There's
the actual
that's see,
metal.
that's the key, is that you're right. And in London, as an example, right now there are outstanding contracts that amount to about 2 billion ounces of deliverable contracts that could stand for delivery against a float. Those are the bars backing it, of about 150 million ounces. They're trading 600 million ounces a day, and they only have 150 million ounces of paper. No one ever stood for delivery, ever, but now they are. And it started in 2020. I started screaming about the COMEX and the LBMA are being bled dry. I talked about how 40 countries brought their gold back from the Bank of England and the New York Fed, which forever gave them access to COMEX and the LBMA. Everyone was repatriating and slowly gobbling up. The reason people can't see this is because we live in a society where instant gratification isn't fast enough. And I said, this is something you cannot go like that. You'll blow up the whole system, and it will only hurt you, whoever you is accumulating it. China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, India. And I've been screaming that forever, right? And China, the largest producer of gold in the world and second largest of silver, is flying all around the world buying doré concentrate, paying double what the West will and shipping it back, so no one knows how much they have. And then they stand for delivery on the LBMA and COMEX quietly. Not too much. Don't rattle the bushes. Just keep siphoning it away, because there is a delivery mechanism. During my career for 35 years, less than 1% of contracts stood for delivery. Now we're seeing massive amounts coming into
So you
COMEX
haven't
at
seen anything like this
nothing.
before, and the fact that they're doing this with paper shows that it's manufactured. It's like they are backed against a wall and they're doing things that are so obvious, and that these business news channels and finance channels
They're all part
are
of it.
they're ignoring it. So
Well, they're all owned by four companies, and maybe the
yeah,
information don't go there, don't go there. And you could talk about Bart Chilton. I may have said this on your show before, but Bart Chilton, everyone who owns silver and gold, silver in particular, should watch Chris Marcus's show, Arcadia Economics. Type in Arcadia Economics Bart Chilton, and in that he was the head of the CFTC, the Commodity Future Trading Commission. And he said to Chris, after Bear Stearns failed, he said this on the show, still up there on YouTube. He said, Bear Stearns went out of business largely because they held the largest short position in the world in silver on behalf of the US government. And that when the price went from 9 to 21, it put him out of business. And Jamie Dimon was called into the office with Hank Paulson and Ben Bernanke. And they said, Jamie, we need you to take this short position. We need you to do this for us. And he said, fine, I'll do it, guys. I'm sure they worked out a sweet deal for JP, but I'll be in violation of position limits. That's okay. We'll give you like 90 days. Get your house in order. Take it. We're all good. And everyone wins. Great. At the end of the 90-day period, Bart Chilton went into his supervisors, which would have been Hank Paulson, the Treasury Secretary, and said, not only have they not pared down the short position, they've increased it. They're in violation of antitrust law. They're in violation of our agreement. They must be prosecuted. He said on Chris's show, and I quote, they told me to back down, Bart. It's a political decision. Now, here's the crazy thing. Bart Chilton died
oh,
very shortly after that. Week or two, he was gone.
uh,
And they say it was natural causes, whatever.
bullshit.
And maybe it was, maybe it wasn't.
It
But what I am
wasn't.
saying, so this has been a game that has been played at the ultra high levels. But for most of our lives, Sarah, these countries like China and India and Russia Less Saudi Arabia because of our alliance, which is now fractured. But all of these countries were not coordinated, motivated, sophisticated. They were borderline quasi third world. And now they're the opposite, wealthy, sophisticated, motivated, coordinated. And they say, we see what you've been doing with silver to rule the world with your military industrial complex and the copious amount of silver it takes to create and manufacture high-tech weaponry. We see what you've done with gold by suppressing it because you went on a 30-year run of suppressed interest rates. And if you have really low interest rates, Gibson's paradox says gold should go to the moon. It is the canary in the gold mine. So they stepped on both for different reasons. And if no one stands for delivery, if you just paper settle everything or roll the contracts over, use it as a casino, as speculation, or accept money instead of the real thing, which everyone did, great. The game goes on forever. When you build a system on paper promises, you can do that. That's Bernie Madoff. And what happens is the first client for Bernie Madoff says, I need my $40 million back. Okay, here you go. And then it starts to snowball. I need mine back. I need mine back. And then they see that it's becoming difficult to get the money back. And it really we got you. And so I think someone got to Trump and told him that this was happening. And he came up with the ruse of calling it tariffs. And all of the metal came back. See, when Western banks short on COMEX paper, which drives down the price, the COMEX sets the price. They will, on their books, they'll buy a long contract in London so that their books are balanced. But when no one's ever standing for delivery, that's fine. And metal can go back and forth, and it always has. They've done this in coordinated fashion. But there are people out there that believe that Trump believes that the European aristocrats and the Bank of England largely were responsible for election interference, were responsible for the color revolution. This is Tom Luongo's theory, and that he's trying to get back at them by draining the LBMA, blowing it up in essence. Where
I think go ahead, finish your thought.
These European banks will be on the hook for it. And it's not just bullion that these banks have, it's everything. And it would blow them up. And the way you would do that is before they figure it out, you say, no, it's tariffs. We need to bring back our long contracts to cover our shorts because people are standing for delivery. We don't want to blow ourselves up. And all of this metal comes back. Now, if I had to guess, fine line between conspiracy and reality, maybe the US government said, fine, you bring this all back because we are going to, things are changing with silver. It's going to be a critical mineral. Things are changing with gold. It's going to back the back end of the treasury market, as I've talked to you about before with Judy Shelton. And you cover your positions, get your house in order, but you're going to sell that gold and silver to the Treasury Department under the guise of the Exchange Stabilization Fund, and we're going to house it because we need it. So you get your house in order. We're going to take the gold and silver off your hands. Everybody wins. And who gets left holding the bag? The European central banks. Now, who sold, as I mentioned the other night? The European central banks. Who bought? Or commercial banks. Who bought? The United States commercial banks. So there is a fine line, but all I can tell you is that this game, which was, they were all copacetic with one another. Maybe under this administration, they're not. That being the European Union banks and the Bank of England with Trump and this administration. But now it's almost like every man and woman for themselves. Get as much as you can, bring it home and hold it, reshore it. It's not about tariffs. It's not about arbitrage. It's about reshoring this stuff and integrating it into the system. So it's going to be very volatile, very interesting. But if one of these banks in London at the LBMA failed to deliver, this is when the whole system can blow up because the systemic chain reaction, if HSBC Bank can't deliver, what does that mean about their interest rate program, their Forex department, their securities department, everything? You would see a run on the banks and the contagion and the systemic chain reaction, boom, just blow it all up. It's a big deal.
Well, I think that this is simplification because there's more than two factions, but I really believe that at the globalist level, which is what we're seeing act out, are two globalist factions that are fighting it out for world power. And Trump represents one, and the European central bankers represent the other. And these are factions.
And the BRICS represent the third.
The BRICS probably represent the third, although there's indication that the European central bankers are trying to co-opt the BRICS. So I think the BRICS were started as an independent movement, and they might have been co-opted by the European central bankers. But I don't think that the BRICS and the European central bankers are aligned. I think that there's been a co-opting of it, and it'll be interesting where that develops. But I think that's what we're seeing play out. I think every war, everything is because of, at a high level. I think our color revolution, I think getting people sidetracked on social issues and while, the Charlie Kirk and all that, and Candace, all that stuff is to get people sidetracked and not look at things that are much more important for their life. Just a short break from the program to share with you an amazing peptide to help you lose weight. It's stronger than Ozempic. And why? It's because it not only reduces your appetite, but it also burns fat. These other GLP-1s on the market, they do not burn fat. They just reduce your appetite. This one, retatrutide, is stronger. It's considered a next generation peptide because of that. And man, does this work. I've been using it for 2.5 weeks and I've already lost 11 pounds, and I cut my dose in half because I was losing weight too quickly. And that kind of freaked me out, to be honest. And so I also am taking this 5-amino 1MQ in capsule form. This helps by making sure that you lose fat, not muscle. And so in conjunction, I'm using both of these. This will work whether you have this or not. And I am telling you, it's amazing. If you are interested in getting this, I have the link below, or you can go to sarahwestall.com under shop. You can use the coupon code Sarah to save 10%. If you have questions about your own use, you should either consult your doctor or you can join Dr. Diane's tribe. And I have a link below to that. It is only $1 for the first week. You can ask her any question you want and get all your answers to this, how to take an injectable. And there shouldn't be any fear in doing that. It is easy and straightforward. Go to sarahwestall.com under shop or use the link below, and remember to use coupon code Sarah.
Well, just at one point on the co-op, there's a part of me that would agree with you, because the M-Bridge, which is the cross-border payment system that allows countries in the BRICS nations to trade across border free from SWIFT intervention, which is largely Chinese technology. It was developed by China, Hong Kong, Thailand, and the UAE. Saudi Arabia became the fifth partner in it, and it was all done through cooperation with the BIS Innovation Hub, which is a Western institution and the most powerful bank on the planet. And at the 12th hour, when they were rolling it out, the BIS pulled out and said, we can't be part of any technology that would allow these countries to sidestep Western sanctions. And it pissed off the BRICS really badly. And now it's called just BRICS Bridge, and they no longer have that affiliation with the BIS that they did. Who knows where things are going? All I can say is that we are moving from a system that is based solely upon trust on a bankrupt nation and their treasuries, which can be sanctioned and taken from you. And we're creating debt right now at a clip of $1 trillion over the last 71 days. I mean, that's just unsustainable. So at some point, things are going to break, don't know what it is. And so when you had mentioned to me the IMF and Kristalina Georgieva.
Well, let me quote. They said, buckle up. It's going to be, and they just said this within the last 2 weeks, buckle up. It's going to get rough. They said, buckle up. I don't remember what else they said behind that, but essentially it's going to get rough.
Right. And Kristalina Georgieva, I have cited her repetitively, and I'm looking at the article right now, and where she says straight up uncertainty is the new normal and look around, I would say to you, she's right. It is. You got wars all over the place, trade wars with China, supply chains breaking, governments shut down, inflation. They're going to lower rates again, right? But they haven't hit their 2% inflation target in like 55 straight months. They're 50% away, and that's okay. They call it tepid, but you're 50% away from your target. That means you're giving up on inflation. By the way, that 3% level is a lie. We know this. John Williams of Shadow Stats, who just measures it the way they used to, would say it's 11. But even at 3%, which is a bunch of crap, they're going to lower rates again, pouring gasoline and giving up on the dual mandate, in essence, by letting inflation run hotter to, stabilize the employment market. But who knows? Who knows? It's devaluing the dollar, and that's what this is all about: saving in dollars, and you're in big trouble. But the IMF says to the governments, in essence, get your act together. Build up your savings, modernize your systems, support innovation and trade. Sounds great in theory. Right now, 60% of this country, Sarah, has a reading proficiency of no higher than the sixth grade. That's true.
I know,
60% of this,
66 or something percent. Oh
yes,
my God.
and
Yeah.
60% it doesn't have a college education, and people can't write out a check for $500, and we're broken, we're insolvent, and
They're
so
not listening to this program.
no, and
You
and
know?
that's why I think Trump is doing what he's doing. And we've talked about my thesis of bringing back manufacturing and how it would have to happen. But a massively devalued dollar, a bond market in the back end pegged to gold, and the Genius Act, which will, whenever people move money, provide synthetic demand for U.S. Treasuries and run the front end of the market. The interesting part about that is that Tether, who is making all the profit between the Treasury issuance and the stablecoin issuance, they get to keep it. They can't transfer it. They're buying gold and Bitcoin. And gold will go to the moon so they can devalue the dollar and peg it to the back end of the bond market. And I believe they'll let Bitcoin run and constantly pull the rug on it in order to pay down the debt.
I
That's
think
just my
that's
own
what they'll do.
opinion.
Yeah, they're going to pull the rug on it. When do you think we'll really start like seeing this happen? Because right now it really seems it's in hyper planning stage, or they're moving on it, but they're building it. We're not seeing the turnover yet.
Once you see it, it's too late.
I
And
know,
that's
but because
if
it's
I've
all
had
put in
any
place, and then
success,
they're going to pull the rug like on a Friday before a
right?
weekend kind of thing.
Of course, that's how it always happens. And if I have had any excess or just stupidity, is that I would say things that people wouldn't about the BRICS and all these things that I've said and largely have been proven correct on a large level. And I will tell you that I think it is happening. You just have to connect the dots, and you know I think it is happening right now, and that's the massive importing of gold and silver into the country. That's the kind of things that we see in the middle of the night when the market is closed
So that's
and
all the
dumping.
movements. That's all the
Yes,
movements to create what it is. And then all of a sudden they'll cut over on a Friday night.
yeah. I mean,
Or do
and
you think
that's
it won't cut over quickly? Do you think it'll be a slow, like it is now, slow until it just kind of burns out
well,
and then
that's my
the new one takes
favorite.
over?
That's why I call my own personal podcast Little by Little. It speaks of logarithmic decay, little by little by little by little, then bang, all at once. And so it is happening, and the question is, how does it all play out? What happens if there's a new administration, a Democratic administration that comes in, and into the next election cycle? Who knows? There's a lot of who
Well, and
knows, and
how do we, I mean, because what happens, the Democrats don't have to be dominant at this, but they've historically have been. They align with interests that aren't for the betterment of the American people when it comes to financial type issues. They only focus on social issues with their base because their base does not even think about economic issues. And then we get these yahoos that come in and we don't even know what the hell they're doing. They're actually, the last time it looked like with Biden, it like looked like they were doing it on purpose because it was too stupid to be stupid.
that's right. Well, and during his administration, Jared Bernstein, his lead economic advisor, said that we should no longer be the reserve currency in the report he wrote called Dethrone King Dollar. He's right. Same thing that Vice President Vance just said. They are trying, it's no longer because of Triffin's dilemma, which is very valid. You will never have a manufacturing. And that's why I believe they are doing a lot of this to a degree on purpose to massively devalue the dollar to reshore manufacturing, because with the lack of education in this country and the spread between, if you don't live in California or New York, I mean, California for IT and New York for financial assets, that's where all the wealth is in this country. And I'm generalizing, but everywhere else in between, you're looking at a massive space between the haves and the have-nots. The people with assets have made a fortune over the last 5, 6 years, and the people with none are watching their cost of living accelerate dramatically and having a hard
That's
time making
true.
ends meet. So something has to be done, and we can't be reliant on the rest of the world to make our pharmaceuticals, from aspirin to penicillin, and our aircraft
That's
components
right.
and our military. So he is trying to do this, I believe, and you have to massively devalue the dollar. And we can dig more into this on future episodes. But all I am simply saying to you is that it is happening, and it's one of these deals where you can't tell the world this is what we're doing.
That's
Most
right.
people would have said they have two choices: inflate or default. And this is choice number three: slowly default on the reserve status to devalue the dollar to bring back your manufacturing. And how do you bring back manufacturing? Give up on world reserve, massively devalue the dollar, The Stablecoin Act will continue to buy gold with the profit between the issuance of the stable coins and the treasuries backing them. They cannot transfer that interest. They keep it. They buy gold. They buy Bitcoin. Both devalue the dollar massively. You peg gold and maybe even Bitcoin, but probably just gold, to the back end of the treasury market, as Judy Shelton said Trump will do next July 4th. Now you have a 20, 30, and she said even a 50-year treasury with zero coupon, no interest rates, redeemable in gold in 20, 30, and 50 years. And you can bring back manufacturing with zero borrowing costs.
That's
Bring
the
it back.
responsible thing to do. The fact that they're
It's the
actually
only thing they can do.
yeah, it's the fact, but it's responsible. The fact that they're actually moving to that. But the last administration, Biden administration, didn't even bother with it. I mean, who were they? I mean, the fact
It
that
seemed to
it's
me
like
that they were
treason
trying to
almost.
find they were trying to find a villain, and that villain would have been, Xi Jinping and OPEC
They were going to let
and
it fail and just point to a villain and just
and
abandon the whole
reset the
thing.
system. And the number two economic advisor under knucklehead Jared Bernstein, I call him a knucklehead, even though I agree with his dethroned King Dollar position. If you Google him trying to go to X and watch him try to explain the issuance of treasuries,
They
it was
sound like an
truly
idiot.
the most humiliating thing I've ever seen for anyone in that position to say on camera. But the number two economic advisor underneath him was Lael Brainerd. She was at the Treasury. She's a modern monetary theorist. Then she went to the Boston Fed, and when Biden passed the executive order to fast track the development of the CBDC, she developed it in conjunction with the Fed and MIT. So she was all about issuing a central bank digital currency. And the only way to do that would be to, I believe, let the system fail, the banks blow up, and blame it on those sons of bitches who dumped the dollar in the world reserve currency. And OPEC, how could they do it to us? That's what it seemed like to me. But in essence, I think Trump wants to do the same thing, only more responsibly. There is no easy way to do this. And I always talk about Shawshank Redemption, where Andy Dufresne had to crawl through 2 miles of crap to get to the other side. There is a little bit of
Good.
brightness on the other side, but we have to go through this period to bring back manufacturing. And it could very easily lead to universal basic income, because people who don't have assets who are saving in dollars will be in big trouble, if I'm right. And that's why you're seeing the biggest money in the world, I believe, go on a massive binge to accumulate and physically hold their gold. It's changing.
But the UBI, Universal Basic Income, this is going to be something that we're going to have to talk about in the future. And anybody who's a small government type person like I am and freedom oriented, UBI is a soul wrecking, destroys countries, I think. But the only time it's better is when you have a situation where the economy fails and people can't eat and AI takes over their jobs and we're in a transition period where people are seriously struggling. So
Yeah.
there could be a transitional period where we figure it out where we don't have a choice. I am
They're
the
saying
last person to support UBI, but I could see us being in a crap situation.
we are heading there. They're saying 50% of entry level jobs will be gone in 5 years or less because of AI. And so
And what
if
do
you
people
have a
do?
Well,
Right?
and they have a sixth grade reading skill and no college education. You tell me, can't go into manufacturing because we don't have any. What do you do? And this is why they need to do it. Or this country and our children and our children's children are FUCK, you know what, ED. And they are. They are.
It'll
Because
be really bad. It'll be
it
really
is. And I don't
bad.
mean to use
Yeah,
profanity, but I want to get my point across. This is real. And if we don't do it and we continue to kick the can down the road, you mentioned the Democrats and their fiscal irresponsibility. The Republicans are just as bad. The difference is that
I
this
agree.
current version of Democrat is not the Democrat that I grew up with,
That's right.
where it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Now it's fanaticism and it's craziness. And the conservative Republican is the Democrat of the 70s. There's no
Well, I
fanatical,
would
I've been
say, well, I'm going to say the conservative Republican, there's a branch that's going off the ledge the other
yeah, but
direction right now.
there's a
And I don't know
fanaticism
what the
side
hell's
there
going
too.
on there, but there's this middle ground that of normal. I would say the adults in the room need to step up and take
There
over.
just is no middle ground on the left side. It seems no one is
That's
has
right.
there's a few that have stepped up to to get rid of just a handful of them. But I guess you could say the same thing. They all vote on partisan policy. The whole thing sucks. the bottom line is that we have to realize that goes well beyond partisan politics, and it's the survival of
That's
this
right.
country and of future generations. So, anyways, that's why I think we're seeing the craziness in gold and silver, and I don't think it will end. It will be very volatile leading into the end of the year and into next year. So buckle up, as Kristalina Georgieva says, and get
Well,
your house in order.
Well, I got to say, like I said last time, in the past, people that came and talk about gold and silver is always talking about it in a very narrow sense. Now, gold and silver and the discussions around gold and silver is the discussions of the economic global world order and what's going on with geopolitics. It is the backdrop of global economics, and you
Unless,
have
of
to look
course, you're
broader.
watching Fox or CNN, then you won't see it. But if
But
you
that's stupid.
watch the alternative media, it is, and that's the sadness of it all, is that you're leading the masses down the wrong path, and that if you don't have assets in this environment, you're in big trouble. And look, people are too focused on the devaluation of the dollar against the Dixie, which is the index of currencies that are all basket cases. And the dollar's down 7 or 8% this year against those crap currencies, but it's down 60% against gold. It was down 50% against gold last year. So, James Rickards says if you go back to 1971 and use that metric, gold should be $94,000 an ounce right now. Now, I'm not saying it's going to go there, but what I am saying is that if you focus on the other crap currencies that are all trying to devalue against the dollar to stimulate exports, well, that's what we have to do now. They're going to devalue the dollar. And if you measure it against the currencies that are all racing to the bottom, you'll be blindsided by the fact your dollar is so fast losing purchasing power. Measure it against gold, and you'll see that to be true. If you take any asset you ever buy over the last 50 years and measure it in ounces of gold, prices are going down. It's deflation. Measure it in dollars, everything's going up. And that's the truth. So gold is the barometer by which we measure the
That's
health of
right.
the currency.
Okay, so where do people go? sarahwestall.com/Miles Franklin.
Thank you. That's
And I
right.
got to tell people that, and I keep saying this, you have to buy from somebody you can trust. And I first of all, you give really competitive premiums, and that's super important. Of course, watching
Our
people get
prices will be as good or
screwed.
better than anyone in the country if people call us.
And they'll get the private price list if they fill out that
Yes.
form. But I got to tell you, even more importantly, is if you don't know much about gold and silver, you have to go to somebody you freaking trust because we're watching people get taken advantage of. So that is so important. And I've seen too many hundreds of people get hosed over and lose significant
Badly.
parts of their life savings. Go to somebody you trust. And you shouldn't endorse or help a company that hoses people over. We're trying to get out of this mess we have in our country of people, the scams, the fraud, the bad behavior. Start supporting those companies that behave in the ways that you want to support people in the way that you want to behave. And that's what I want to put. Support the companies that you can trust. Period.
I appreciate that. And I like the way that you don't out the companies you can't trust, and I haven't either. But they deserve to be, and it would be great to have a forum with me and all of these other companies that you and I know of that have been doing that to the public. You've seen it with your own eyes, a
Eventually,
lot.
that needs to get out there. It's
It
it's
won't.
really
Well,
sad.
maybe it
I
will.
don't know
Let's
if
hope
it
it
will,
does.
but I don't know. And there's too much liability on us to do it. So
Right.
at this point it's too. But just be careful. Well,
Yep.
thank you so much, Andy. I
You're the
always
best,
appreciate it.
Sarah. I
Thank you so
do
much.
too, and I will look forward to chatting with you soon. You stay well and take care. Thanks for having me again.